We've heard from LeBron, we've heard from Luka, we've heard from Kyrie, we've heard from Anthony Davis, we've heard from Rob Pelinka, we've heard from Nico Harrison on the record, on camera. This is a rare moment where I actually believe that everybody is telling the exact truth.
Anthony Davis is gonna kill it. Oh God! I'll be here. I'll be here when you're ready. I'll be here.
We're all still here for you, Mavs fans. But I think someone who's really going through it is Shams. How are you feeling?
Feeling good.
You're going okay.
Good. I have a lot of energy right now.
Yeah, you sure do.
Adrenaline's running high still.
Yeah. Well, welcome into Hoop Streams, our trade deadline special. Alongside Shams Charania, I'm Cassidy Hubbarth. We're also joined by Brian Windhorst, live from LA, who's been on TV all day long, all week long, just like Shams, because there's been a lot going on. Actually, take a look at this graphic, and Shams, the wildest deadline in NBA history. You did a little Jimmy Butler action.
I tried to do my best impersonation.
And that was amazing.
How many
Is that your
takes?
first time seeing him, Brian? I was, that was like right after the deadline.
Oh yeah,
too.
because look at this.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Look at this graphic. I mean, can you remember a trade deadline, Brian, with this many stars involved?
There's been trade deadlines where there's been more actual trades, but in terms of impact, with I think 9 All-Stars, former All-Stars, it's pretty big. And in all honesty, this will always be remembered as the Luka deadline. No matter what happens with Luka, whether he goes on and becomes a generational all-time Laker or goes in the other direction, this will always be remembered as the Luka deadline. Shams' post, Cassidy, announcing that trade, breaking that news, has 100 million views. 100 million views. It's quite possibly the most impactful social media post for news in the history of NBA news. So that's how we started this Saturday night. So when you frame it like that, you understand that however you want to frame history, we achieved it. We saw it.
Wait, that's hands down your most viewed tweet.
Yeah, for sure. I think like I had some in the 40s, even this year. But I mean, 100
If
million.
Luka was dating Taylor Swift, that's the only way we would
maybe
get
that's
more.
the only way. All right, we're going to get into, obviously, I mean, we're 5 days since that Luka trade. It still feels like yesterday. I'm sure it does for you, too, since you haven't slept. But let's get into first what happened with, the guy that we've been talking about for 2 months now, and that is Jimmy Butler.
He was supposed to be the biggest name of this deadline, by the way.
Yes, he was. And it still was a pretty big move. Can you walk us through how Jimmy Butler ended up in Golden State?
So the entire process really played out in a 2-month period, early to really mid-December, when it was made clear around the league and around, obviously, the Heat that they were open to listening to trade offers. And Jimmy Butler also was open and ready for a move to preferably a win-now contender. And then from there, we started the saga of, tumultuous times, suspensions.
To say the least.
Couple games here and there where inadequate effort maybe was presented as Jimmy Butler was trying to find a way out of Miami, because Miami wasn't just going to give him up. They wanted exactly what they got back, which is a two-way player in Andrew Wiggins, who they really like, a protected first-round pick. None of these contracts really hinder them for the long term. Wiggins specifically has value. They didn't want to do Bradley Beal ever, because his number in that third year was just, to them, erroneous. You look at this Wiggins deal, though, they feel like they're not that concerned at all about that number. They feel like he's only going to help this team with Bam Adebayo and Tyler Hero. And specifically how he ended up with the Warriors was, it was a 2-team race for really the last couple weeks. The Warriors and the Suns. And the Suns just could not find a way to get a third team involved with Bradley Beal, a 4-team, 5th-team. And with Kevin Durant, in his situation, there was a potential of a 3-team trade discussed. No one got to the point where there was an agreement, but certainly frameworks, theories, concepts, and as the sides kept going back and forth, and then Kevin Durant has his moment where he makes it clear that he does not want to be a member of the Warriors ever again. And then Jimmy Butler, he's the next best option, and he ends up with the Warriors.
Brian, I mean, obviously we know the ripple effect. I've talked a lot about, what this means for the Suns locker room. We'll get into that in a bit, but I do want to address just what this means for the Warriors. How do you see that trio of Steph, Draymond, and Jimmy, fitting together?
Right. Well, ever since a year ago, I mean, when they knew that Klay Thompson was probably going to be on his way out, I think they knew a year ago at the trade deadline it was unlikely they were going to keep Klay Thompson. They were looking for a player that could take some of the offensive burden off of Steph Curry. They looked at LeBron James last year on this day, on deadline day, and I assume Klay Thompson would have been in that deal. I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure that's what would have happened. Then they went into the summer when Klay left, and they tried to use that salary space on a guy like Paul George, on a guy like Lowry Markkanen. They weren't able to get that done. They come into this trade deadline season, and they tried to get Kevin Durant, who's one of the greatest offensive players of all time, and they weren't able to get that done. So they got to a point where they were like, what deal can we do? And the Heat, after everything that happened, the Heat liked the package that the Warriors had for Jimmy Butler. Now, when the Warriors offered it, they were thinking they were going to acquire Jimmy Butler to use in a trade for Kevin Durant. But they had agreed on the format with the Heat. The Heat liked Andrew Wiggins. They liked how he felt, or how he fit in. They liked the first-round pick that they were going to get for him. And so they were like, look, Jimmy Butler may not be the most perfect fit, but we can do this deal, and Jimmy Butler can carry that offensive load. Jimmy Butler is the type of player who can do two things incredibly valuable to the Warriors. One, when Steph is on the bench, he can be a dynamic, creative offensive player and play at the other end of the court. Secondly, he can be a difference maker in the playoffs. He can take a game in the playoffs that his team was going to lose and flip it on its head. That could be extremely important to the Warriors, especially if they're a play-in team and they're looking at elimination games. Jimmy Butler has led play-in teams to the finals. And if that's what the Warriors are faced with here, they're making the best of the player that they can get, and that's what they did.
And we'll see if, this whole scenario and him, being suspended indefinitely, not really playing a lot of games, what type of legs he has right now, if he's going to come in out of this trade deadline as playoff Jimmy, or, we still have to wait and see, especially seeing where the Warriors right now are in the standings. Shams, did you see this last night? I wanted to play a funny clip that we saw. What do you think of this guy's reporting?
Let's see.
Kyle Anderson, Dennis Schroeder, and Andrew Wiggins.
Okay.
We robbed them. First round pick, protected.
Okay, I'm gonna look at it right now and bring it to
No, they didn't give out the year, no.
Wait, are you kidding?
I swear to God.
I think he's coming for our jobs, is what he's doing.
I mean, he must have felt like you, but he was reading your report.
He had my names flipped, though, because I remember I listed Kyle Anderson.
Oh.
It was in reverse order. It was Wiggins, Schroeder, Kyle Anderson. And actually, that reporting was a little, in the moment, they were trading those players out, but obviously those players all went to different places.
You see
Well,
this?
here's
This
the
is free
thing.
advice.
The
Step up
whole
your game.
"we robbed them" part, I don't think I saw that in Shams' report. That was an editorial comment that apparent Heat fan added to the messaging.
I'm just trying to figure out, was it immediately after that Kevin Love went on his phone and, sent out that Shawshank Redemption clip?
I think he had that saved in draft.
It was definitely.
I'm pretty sure he had that.
It was definitely. Quickly, just really quickly, Brian, just KD, that locker room, answer me this. Who's going to have the more explosive locker room going forward? Jimmy Butler and Draymond Green, or the Suns?
The Suns had a tough week. They worked, Shams knows, the Suns worked so very hard to improve their roster for the last 6 weeks. They really explored everything, and instead they weren't able to get anything done, and their star player was offended. You can debate about whether or not you think he should have been offended, or that's the game, or whatever. The teams around them improved, and they were not able to do so, and now they've got some cleaning up to do, and they have the hardest remaining schedule to face them as they come out of this. So the Suns are not in the greatest position right now, but let's let them work and see how they can dig themselves out.
Speaking of offended, possibly the player who may feel the most offended, Luka Dončić, because he was feeling some type of way about being traded and not getting that super max contract, which he's ineligible for. It's been 5 days since the bombshell that basically broke NBA Twitter, X, how we're doing it. Just looking at the process, Brian, you know, when your phone started going off, what were you thinking? Were you thinking, like the rest of us, that, you know, Shams got hacked?
No, I knew exactly. I knew that Shams was telling the truth. I mean, not the truth, but I knew it was Shams. I am not shocked by many things in pro sports. This was very surprising. In the moment, I understood that it was about what the Mavericks' decision with Luka. It's so easy to focus for so many Laker fans, the tens of millions of Lakers fans across the planet, to focus on the fact that they got a generational player in his early 20s. But the story here was the Mavericks' shunning of Luka and sending him away. And that, to this moment, is hard to grapple with. And what we've seen in the last few days is an attempt by a lot of people who don't understand to come up with conspiracy theories. That's what happens when people can't explain something. They come up, they invent conspiracy theories. And the irony of all of that is, after hearing from everybody, after listening to everybody on camera, on the record, explain what they went through, not only do I think that this is very simple, but I think everybody was truly shocked and was telling the truth about this. I think the Mavericks ultimately believed they didn't want to give Luka a $350 million extension. They didn't think it was a good investment, and everybody was shocked by it. And I know that that's not something we see every day, but I think it was basically that simple. I could be wrong, but I think that's what it was.
No, I mean, this is the shock and awe behind me is all the. Do you turn off your notifications?
Yeah, no notifications.
You couldn't. Your phone would literally explode.
I will say though, I think people make whatever they want about, you know, the conditioning stuff. Like, there's definitely something there in terms of, and I've said this on shows this week, there was a level of friction that has developed over the last year between Luka Dončić and that team's medical and performance staff, and how he went about his rehabs, how he went about things. That's, you know, but that's how Luka Dončić might have always been, right? And they went to the NBA Finals with Luka Dončić seven months ago. He led them there. He's been an All-NBA player. He's been
5 years in a row.
One of the best players in the world,
scoring.
MVP, runner-up, three-time, or top 3 or top 5 or whatever. The biggest, to me, the biggest indictment that was made in this is Nico Harrison, the Mavericks, feeling, and what they've evaluated is Anthony Davis, they feel is better for them to win a championship, and better for their culture, their environment, and more committed to them. And his actions are more committed. Even though he hasn't been there, Nico Harrison, Jason Kidd, they all know him. Kyrie Irving.
Well, that's
him.
it. It's also building around Kyrie and AD. I think people are, you know, looking at Luka, but it's because it was also Nico's move bringing Kyrie in. And, you know, I listened to a Hoop Collective marathon, and Brian, I know you talked a lot about, you know, thinking that Kyrie move wasn't a good move, but time will tell.
A lot of people made comments on a few of Nico Harrison's moves, right? And then they've always turned out well. Like all of his moves. He got PJ Washington, Kyrie Irving, obviously. So,
I mean, he's not bashful. Brian, you know, just a little. Let's move to the Lakers here. They added that versatile big man alongside Luka. You know, maybe signaling the future is a lot sooner than expected. Your thoughts on, you know, like, what's the grade that you give them right now?
Well, they went out and they could have figured out how a stopgap, just a guy to play center for the rest of the season, and maybe tried to address it in the offseason. And it would have been cheaper to do it that way. But I think the Lakers believe that they can do something here. And so they paid a premium to get Mark Williams. Unless maybe Shams knows better than me, I don't think Mark Williams was like openly available on the market. I think the Lakers identified him as a guy that fits what Luka wants, which is a rangy big man who's a rim runner, you know, rolls to the post, can block shots. You know, a guy like Derek Lively, who was made a big difference for him when he got to Dallas. And they basically, I think, called the Hornets and said, what would it take? And they paid a premium amount here, but that's a franchise center. You know, he's a 15-10 guy, They essentially paid 3 first-round picks because Dalton Connect, their 2024 pick, the pick swap, and the 2031 pick, it's sort of like 2 picks plus. That's a pretty price to pay. He's going to be their guy going forward. And they did it now and paid that price now, Cass, because I think they believe that if this team is healthy, they can get in the playoffs and cause some damage with Luka, LeBron, Mark Williams, Austin Reeves, the supporting role players that they have. Jared Vanderbilt is finally healthy and contributing. So they've won 9 out of 11 games. I think the Lakers feel like they are in championship contention. I'm not quite there yet. I want to see how they all fit together, but I'm open-minded on the Lakers. I'm not going to take anything off the table for them at this point.
But I think that's also what is upsetting Mavericks fans so much is that, they allowed this kind of window for them to be able to offer another unprotected first-round pick and, some other guys to get Mark Williams in the trade and fill that hole left by Anthony Davis. And, I know we already saw Luka on the bench already in LA, but I think what we also want to see is how well the fit is going to be in Dallas. What can you tell us about AD's status tonight as Dallas takes on Boston?
Yeah, I think Anthony Davis is trending more toward a debut on Saturday, back at home than he is tonight. But of course, they want him back on the court. I think he's itching, getting ready here to play, and that combination with Anthony Davis, Kyrie Irving, that duo, I think they're very excited about. Getting Caleb Martin in the trade as well. He's going to miss some time with an injury to start his Mavericks career, but they really like that addition. And Max Christie played amazing, I think, in his debut. So they got 3. I think obviously Anthony Davis is not just a role player. Anthony Davis is an all-NBA, all-defensive, first team, all NBA type of players. So,
Brian, you think that AD's been getting a little disrespected in all this talk?
I hear people saying that. I don't think that's anybody's intention. I think people celebrating Luka is celebrating a guy who's on a higher level. Luka's made 5 first-team All-NBAs. I don't think Anthony Davis has made any. So
right.
That's not meant to
and
be
he's
insulting
25.
to him. But I think Anthony Davis had, in my view, one of the best seasons of his career last year. He was All-NBA and All-Defense. That's a combo that basically is a Hall of Fame combo there. He's having a great year this year as well. They asked more of him offensively, and he's been delivering. And he's been healthy for the most part these last 2 years. The Mavericks are getting a guy. People are talking about how Luka's younger. That's true, of course, but Anthony Davis is absolutely in his prime.
And it seems like he wants to be there, right? I mean,
I think he embraced it. I actually think everybody's sort of embraced it now. I think you will see Luka more and more open up to this. He was obviously hitting the solar plexus, but he's a Laker. He's a Laker.
He's a Laker.
Most players in this league at one point or another would like to be a Laker. If they're going to trade you like this, that's something that's really difficult to deal with. But they traded him to the Lakers, and I think there's a possibility that he will come to say that was a fortunate moment in my career. There's a lot of people, star players, who have worked very hard, caused a lot of drama to get themselves to the Lakers. Anthony Davis being one of them. Luka, it landed in his lap. So
like
let's
you said,
see how history
he has
looks
the
back on
ocean,
this.
right? He has the ocean, just
amongst
right there.
other things,
right?
Yes.
To say the least. What can you tell us about when we may see Luka on the court in that Lakers yellow, gold?
There's optimism. Luka Dončić could play as early as Saturday at home against the Pacers. He's coming off a calf injury. He hasn't played since Christmas Day. Second calf injury for him just this season. He had one in preseason as well. So that's the hope. That's what they're aiming for. And I think for Luka Dončić, getting on the court with LeBron James, I think as NBA fans, as basketball fans, you want to see this. How is this going to fit? How is it going to work? You have Luka Dončić in his prime. I mean, not in the prime yet, but entering the prime of his career.
Oh yeah.
And a still dominant LeBron James.
I know LeBron wants to see it, as Brian pointed out several times. LeBron pointed to the bench this is how this pick and roll is going to go. LeBron may be the most excited out of everybody right now just to see what this is going to look like. I want to run through some more reaction to this trade because it's really crazy. That the reaction like I don't think people still fully believe that it's happening until we see them all out on the court. And there's just a couple questions, the internet's most burning questions. Did the Mavericks even contact other teams to see what they could get for him? If getting a 32-year-old Rudy Gobert cost the T-Wolves 5 firsts and 5 players, then I know a 25-year-old Luka could have gotten Dallas more. Wow. So you've reported this, but it really was just the Lakers?
They only talked to the Lakers. They wanted Anthony Davis. They pinpointed Anthony Davis as the player that they wanted.
Can I just say something real quick on this, Cass?
Yeah.
The number of first-round picks, I don't care if you give me 75 first-round picks. How many first-round picks are Anthony Davis?
Right.
If I give you 12 first-round picks, you guarantee you getting Anthony Davis? You can't look at the number of picks in Anthony Davis the same way. The Timberwolves didn't trade Anthony Davis for Rudy Gobert.
Yeah.
None of those picks so far have turned into an all-star. Rudy Gobert won a Defensive Player of the Year. So I'm sorry, it's a bugaboo of mine.
Yeah, I hear you. Let's run through some of these other ones. These are just kind of comments. You know, the internet will internet. So Rob started the rumor that Luka's fat. How about this one? The Mavs didn't want to pay the Supermax. Brian, you actually kind of, we're talking a little bit about how we saw it. Luka was asked, like, was there any conversation that you weren't going to take the Supermax? And he said, absolutely not. Easy question. But from the Mavs perspective, what's your insight?
Actions over words,
Right.
Cass. If they wanted to pay him the Supermax, they would have paid him the Supermax. Period.
Yeah.
I mean, they would have done it this summer. This is a no-brainer. And by the way, I know Luka. I'm glad Luka said it on the record. Of course, he was going to take the 350.
Right.
Duh. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, everybody's looking for a conspiracy.
No.
It's straight at you.
Right.
By the way, I think the whole conditioning thing, as Sham said earlier, is overblown. The conditioning thing was part of what frustrated them about Luka. It's not the only thing. I see people like going, oh, he's out of condition. That's not the only thing. But I will say this. Luka was asked, and he said he doesn't think he's out of shape. The Mavericks think he's out of shape. He doesn't. You don't need a conspiracy. Right there.
Yeah.
One guy team says this, he says this. Hello, there's a disconnect right in front of you.
I mean, you've also said it. They wanted out of the business of Luka Dončić and what that all means. This is last one. You guys are two esteemed journalists, so you don't need to respond to this. I'm just going to read it out loud just so our viewers. NBA is rigged for the Lakers. Won't ever convince me otherwise. Adam Silver strong-armed the new owner to trading him to the Lakers to approve his purchase of the team. I think there are going to be a lot of people who, doesn't matter what you tell them, are going to feel that way because,
So 2 years later, the deal was this. Okay, buy the team, get to the finals, then, that was the script, right? Like, get to the finals, then trade them, right? Okay,
right.
Cool.
I saw
Can't wait for the next chapter.
I saw that finger come. I was like, what? we got a proclamation
here's the
coming
thing.
out.
You want to know why? You want to know why Shams is so good at his job?
We've seen a lot of it.
Because
but tell me more.
Conspiracy requires two things. It requires organization and secrecy. These two things are an extraordinary rare commodity in the NBA. Nobody's organized, nothing stays secret. The reason Shams is so good at his job is because he finds out secrets. What secret does he find out?
Yeah.
He would know. Trust me, if there was a conspiracy, Shams would know.
Yeah.
There's no conspiracy. Not enough.
And Shams is really good at his job because, case in point, we saw.
Because I'm on Hoop Streams. That's why.
And what a way to
making
have
the debut with Cass and B.
Yes, exactly. Thank you so much. I know you got, maybe some sleep to catch up on, maybe some, buyout deals you need to work on. So we're going to let you go as we, continue on for another 15 minutes here with Brian Windhorst. But thank you, Shams, for everything.
Appreciate
and
you guys.
what a ride it was. All right, that's enough reaction from the internet. Take a listen to this.
I thought I was going to spend my whole career there because I think loyalty is a big word for me.
I was shocked. Everyone else? Like I said, I didn't know. I was actually at home about to watch a movie with my wife and got the phone call. So I had no idea. I just sent the team text about congratulations on the win against the Knicks, a big win, and then found out like an hour later I was no longer with the team. So I was in shock, obviously. Had no idea that it was happening. But now I'm kind of over it and just kind of getting ready to play with Dallas.
It's the nature of our business, and it is a ruthless business. So you just got to be ready to pick up the pieces and still run towards the championship. That's the ultimate goal on why I play, and having other guys that are championship winners too helps. But at the same time, we still have to acknowledge that our little Slovenian president is no longer here, and we got to adjust.
Luka's been my favorite player in the NBA for a while now. I think you guys know that.
Any concerns that because you brought in a young star, that some of these priorities kind of might shift more towards the future rather than the present?
What's wrong with that? If I had concerns, I would have waived my no trade clause and got up out of here.
I mean, lot to take in there. I was wrong. We have got 5 minutes left with you, Brian. Let's.
Because I went off on a rant about conspiracies. That's why I blasted through our time.
That's also what this time of year is about. And there was so much that happened. So let's do it. Let's attack it this way. 4 teams did not make a trade this season: Nuggets, Timberwolves, Magic, and Blazers. What do you think about those teams, if they were in the mix, and why they didn't see anything go down?
Well, the Magic never make trades. They basically never make trades. The last trade that they made that brought in talent was in 2019 for Markelle Fultz. They sold some players at the 2021 deadline, like Nikola Vucevic and stuff. I mean, I guess they made a trade 5 years ago, mid-season. They never make trades. This actually was a time where I thought they should have made a trade. They need offense. They're in a bit of a free fall right now. They've completely slipped down to 8th, even though they're healthiest that they've been. They have all these draft picks and all these expiring contracts, and they did nothing. Jeff Weltman, their GM, just doesn't believe in doing stuff in midseason. So I think it's a missed opportunity, but that's his team. I felt that the Nuggets could have improved themselves, but they were really in a bit of a straitjacket. They don't have tradable salary. They don't have tradable draft picks. They're in an onslaught. These teams behind them are all making moves. Sacramento, the Lakers, obviously, the Warriors. They're trying to fend off the Lakers right now, and they could have used a bolst on their bench. And they tried, by the way. They just couldn't. They couldn't come up with anything. And Minnesota, and the fact that Minnesota and Phoenix weren't able to do anything. Phoenix did the Jusuf Nurkic trade, but that was really a salary dump trade. It was actually a pretty shrewd salary dump trade, but it didn't upgrade their roster. But that's an indication of the penalty for being a second apron team. Minnesota and Phoenix are second apron teams. The NBA, the design of this new CBA, they don't want teams like that to be able to improve themselves. And we see the aprons at work all of the time. And, again, the Mavericks or the Wolves are a team that a bunch of teams around them are making moves to try to improve themselves, and they were not able to do that. I will say this. I thought at one point, Cass, that the Portland Trail Blazers were going to be a seller at this deadline and that they may sell a player or two. And then they won 10 out of 11 games. And I actually feel bad. I have to shout them out because they're doing great. We've had so much drama with Jimmy Butler and Luka Dončić and whatever else, and Kevin Durant. We haven't paid attention to how well they're playing. So instead of being a seller, they stayed firm, and I think that's a win for them. It's almost like buying. So the Trailblazers are one of the best stories going in the NBA right now.
Well, you let people know. Also on the Hoop Collective, if you haven't listened to their marathon week as well. I want to kind of round the corner here and play a little better or worse. I'm going to name a few teams, and you tell me if you think that team got better or worse, okay? Let's start with the Warriors. Better or worse?
I think they absolutely got better. I think Jimmy Butler has gas left in the tank. They didn't give him a 4-year extension. They gave him a 2-year extension. I think he's a difference maker. I think he'll be rested. I think he can absolutely help Steph Curry. I don't think that their team is going to turn into like a juggernaut contender, but they absolutely got better. And they gave him a contract that, in theory, they could still use in another trade in the future. I know you don't want to talk about that the day a contract's signed, but I always look at things the day a contract's signed. Could you trade that contract? I think Jimmy Butler is tradable, as I think he's still a valuable player.
Okay, interesting. How about the Heat? Did they get better or worse?
I think they spun their wheels, which is good because they traded a star player. I think they spun their wheels, though. I think they got a chance to make the playoffs.
And what about the Lakers? Better or worse?
Come on, Cass.
Okay.
Ask a real question.
Okay, Mavs. Better or worse? They were in the finals last year.
I I think the Mavs' ceiling may have lowered a little bit, but I totally understand why they did this. They believe they can win with defense and size, and they could get into a playoff series that they are better equipped to win with Anthony Davis and Luka Dončić, and they could get a laugh. I don't know if they're going to get the last laugh over the next 10 years, but they could get the last laugh this season at least.
Well, Nico Harrison, that mortgaged everything on that, so we'll see. Spurs, better or worse?
Excellent deal for the Spurs. I'm not sure that De'Aaron Fox is a $50 million player, but I could be wrong about that. I could undervalue him because he's been with the team where he hasn't had this type of player with him. I'm a little bit concerned about how much they're going to have to pay him because obviously there was an understanding he's going to sign a max contract this summer. You have him on a max. In a couple of years, you're going to have Victor on a max. I'm not sure in the current environment whether you can add to the team. If you have your two max players, you need them both to be awesome. And maybe De'Aaron will prove that. I'm not 100% sure he's the number 2 on a championship team, but again, I could be wrong. He could prove to me that he actually is, so we'll see.
Well, the Kings certainly didn't think so, but I don't really understand what the Kings are thinking in general. Better or worse for Sacramento?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about it is I really like Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan as people, and they're very talented players, but they have not demonstrated that they drive winning playing together.
We have seen it.
And they're not a good defense, they're not good defensive players, and so they've had major investment in two guys who don't work together, who don't play great defense.
Yeah. Okay.
But I like them. I don't want to say anything bad about them.
I think, a trade that really kind of went under the radar from my perspective, the Bucks, and, shipping out Chris Middleton and getting Kyle Kuzma. Did the Bucks get better or worse?
Yeah, so I think Kyle Kuzma is an undervalued player. He's having a really poor season by his standards, and I think he was dragged down by being on a really bad team with a bleak outlook. I don't think he's that player. I don't. And I could be wrong about this, and I think that the Bucks bought low here. Chris Middleton was a vital member of their championship team, a vital member of the 2021 Olympic gold medalist team. He has been injured, and he's just not been the same player. Everybody would admit this. Chris would probably admit this. He hasn't been the same player. And so the Bucks bought low by getting rid of a player who's just diminished. I think Kuzma is really athletic. He'll help Giannis. I don't know if it elevates them as a team, but I liked the trade for Milwaukee.
Meanwhile, where in the world is Dennis Schroeder? 4 teams in 24 hours.
Probably on a Delta flight to Detroit.
There we go. You're in sunny Los Angeles. Thank you so much for being on Hoop Streams, the trade deadline special after what I know was a long day and a long week, but what an exciting trade deadline it was. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you guys next time.